The U.S. seized a tanker recently. Russia specifically asked the United States not to seize that tanker. Does this action risk a larger conflict with Russia?
I believe you're referring to the Bella 1 tanker that was seized this morning. The Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security, in coordination with the Department of War, did announce that seizure this morning for violations of U.S. sanctions. I've spoken about the enforcement of our sanctions policy at the podium prior to the new year, and this administration is going to fully enforce the sanction policy of the United States. The vessel this morning was seized in the North Atlantic pursuant to a warrant issued by a U.S. federal court after being tracked, and this was a Venezuelan shadow fleet vessel that has transported sanctioned oil, and the United States of America, under this president, is not going to tolerate that. I would also just add the vessel had a judicial seizure order, and the crew, so that means the crew is now subject to prosecution for any applicable violation of federal law, and they will be brought to the United States for such prosecution if necessary. Answer that question. I don't want to make new policy at this podium today with respect to Venezuela. With respect to the two ships that you mentioned, I spoke with you about the Bella 1. There was another vessel this morning, the Sophia, that in coordination with the Department of War, the Department of Homeland Security apprehended it. This is a stateless, sanctioned, dark fleet motor tanker, and this occurred without incident. This vessel was operating in international waters and conducting illicit activities in the Caribbean Sea. The U.S. Coast Guard is escorting the Sophia to the United States for final disposition. To answer your question, Kelly, directly, this was through Operation Southern Spear. The Department of War is unwavering in its mission to crush illicit activity in the Western Hemisphere. And as the President has repeatedly stated, we're going to defend our homeland and restore security and strength across the Americas.
The president has been adamant that he is now in charge of Venezuela, but Delcy Rodriguez said the government of Venezuela runs her country, no one else, saying, quote, there's no external agent governing Venezuela. So which one is it?
Let me just be very clear. This is the first time that I've addressed Venezuela from the podium since being back and since the historic and incredibly successful military operation, law enforcement operation conducted by our United States military that you all saw and the world witnessed last week. The skill, the might of the United States military and our country under the leadership of this president is on full display to the rest of the world. And let's just set the record straight. There isn't another military in the world who could have pulled off this operation. There is not another president in the world or in our nation's history who had the courage to authorize such a mission. And I think the world has taken notice that America is truly back. With respect to Venezuela, the Trump administration, led by Secretary Rubio, the vice president, and the president's entire national security team, is in close correspondence with the interim authorities in Venezuela. We obviously have maximum leverage over the interim authorities in Venezuela right now, and the president has made it very clear that this is a country within the United States, the Western Hemisphere, close by the United States, that is no longer going to be sending illegal drugs to the United States of America. It's no longer going to be sending and trafficking illegal people and criminal cartels to kill American citizens as they have in the past. And the president is fully deploying his peace through strength foreign policy agenda. So we're continuing to be in close coordination with the interim authorities, and their decisions are going to continue to be dictated by the United States of America.
Just one follow-up, when you talk about that leverage there, has the Venezuelan government fully committed to turning over its oil to the United States indefinitely, and what happens if they do not?
Well, as you saw, the president announced last night, this was a deal. This was a deal made by the president and his team with the Venezuelan interim authorities. This will benefit both the American people and the Venezuelan people. And Secretary Wright and the Department of Energy are working with the interim authorities and also with the private oil industry to execute on this historic energy deal. That's not only good for the United States, but it's also going to revive the prosperity, the safety, the security of both the United States and Venezuela as well.
Jeez.
I'm going to brief them on this issue. The U.S. military operation in Venezuela was decisive and justified. Nicolas Maduro was responsible for the deaths of Americans after years of trafficking illegal drugs and violent cartel members into this country, and this is undisputed, and everybody knows it. These are crimes for which he's been properly indicted in a U.S. court, and an arrest warrant was duly issued, and now he has learned what accountability looks like under President Trump. The U.S. is no longer going to allow criminal regimes to profit from wreaking havoc and destruction on our country. That's what the American people voted for. They wanted to return to the rule of law, insanity at the border, and they wanted this kind of nonsense and dangerous activity to stop. Republicans for that protection. Our brave military was in and out of Venezuela in 2.5 hours, and there wasn't a single American casualty. It's really something that everybody should respect and applaud. And because I'm sure you'll have questions, let me be clear. The Constitution gives Congress the power to declare war. There's no dispute about that, of course. But we are not in a war in Venezuela. The Constitution also vests the president with the power as commander-in-chief that he can use to deploy military forces to address threats to the U.S. and enforce our laws. And that's what happened here. It's exactly what happened here. The War Powers Act has been cited by Democrats. It only requires notification to Congress within 48 hours of the initiation of hostilities. It does not require prior approval, and they properly notified Congress. And I've mentioned publicly, Secretary Rubio called me at 4 a.m. To notify the Speaker of the House of what was taking place and why. Despite the claims, by the way, they submitted that to us in writing as well. They checked all the boxes, did everything they were supposed to do. Despite the claims by some of my colleagues under the War Powers Act, there's just not a requirement that they do anything else fully. What happens next? There are plans and procedures in place, but it's impossible to know exactly how it's all going to play out. We have to see how that works. I trust the people who are in charge of this. I'm told, and the President has mentioned, and Secretary Rubio has mentioned, that our American oil companies will be involved in getting that infrastructure back up, and that will have a lot to do with how all this sorts out. But we don't know the details of that yet, and I certainly don't. The House has not been apprised of it because I think it is in the works right now. This has just happened. This is a seismic development. This just happened. So that is in America's interest. It is not, I think it's not against Greenland's interest. There's a lot of thoughtful discussion to be had there, and that's what we expect is going to happen. So all this stuff about military action and all that, I don't think it's, I don't even think that's a possibility. I don't think anybody's seriously considering that. And in the Congress, we're certainly not. It is an America first priority to look to our strategic and national defense initiatives and what would be advantageous to us. Greenland offers a lot of that. I've mentioned this already. Obviously, the strategic importance of its geographical placement, but also the rare earth minerals that are there and everything else. That is directly in line with commitments made on the campaign trail by President Trump and all of us to seek America's interest first. Now, that said, does that mean we're going to go send troops into Greenland and take it over? No. I mean, they only have, 40, 50,000 people there. This is not a thing, okay?